Welcome to week 5 of GLIAC Weekly. I am Matt Witwicky. A lot of folks know me as Witt, along with our expert, Tony Nicolette. Tony, how are you doing?
Hey man, if I were any better, I'd be you, Wit.
Let's not get carried away. Uh, now, you were busy doing travels this week. You were just in North Carolina. You just got back. Tell me a little bit about that, buddy.
Just the job that actually pays the bills versus the fun hobby that I put a lot of time into. Took me on a trip, but I got to go see a couple customers and had some good experiences with that. Got some work done, so it was good. And yeah, we obviously wanted to try and put this out a little earlier in the week, but the hotel Wi-Fi was not a willing participant, so it was better to have the production be solid than wait and put it out here on Thursday.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we're going to get a chance to talk a little bit about some interesting games this week. With Grand Valley had a huge game, national game. We had Saginaw Valley, who ended up having a game that ended up being a pretty big result. And
Absolutely.
we've got some great stuff to cover. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start on off with the Grand Valley situation. I'll tell you an interesting thing, Tony. I wake up on Saturday before I had a chance to get to watch the game. I go ahead and I'm on the Twitter machine. And when I get on the Twitter machine, I wake up to this.
Hmm.
West Florida telling Grand Valley, it's time. We are coming for you.
That's cool.
And I started watching the game, Tony, and you know what my immediate thought was? Somebody might have taken this a little bit personal because shortly thereafter, I saw a whole lot of this. And we're talking a little bit about this Grand Valley contest, and we're going to go ahead and kind of pull up a little bit of the result. And needless to say, West Florida had mentioned that they were coming to get Grand Valley, but they made a trip, and it didn't really turn out quite that way. Let's watch some of the video, Tony, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about what you had a chance to see there in person.
Yeah. So, and obviously, I got to cover this game as the color guy for Flow Sports. So I had a bird's eye view of all this stuff. And one of the things that we talked about, the best compliment I could give to West Florida was they didn't quit, because Grand Valley was doing body blow after body blow after body blow and just kind of wearing them out. And we didn't have the stat sheet up there for very long, but 8 sacks in total for Grand Valley by the defense.
Yeah.
In this game, Marcus Stokes took a lot of hits, and I said on the broadcast, "Hey, man, the kid's tough," because he kept answering the bell. He kept going out there and taking snaps. But 8 sacks belies how many hits this kid took. Because
Yeah.
there's a ball right there that he got rid of. That wasn't a sack, but boy, he took a shot. Again, I think it was body blows both from the Grand Valley defense, but then also offensively. Grand Valley ended up rushing for somewhere north of 350 in this game, if memory serves. And, it was a little bit slow going maybe in the second quarter. You see Byron Perrier there getting a fumble return for West Florida's only touchdown in the second quarter. I think it was just too many body blows. And over time, Grand Valley ended up wearing them out. And, of course, Kyle Knott has to dab one of those in every so
I
often
was just
too.
going to say, does he practice that? It looks like it, and
I don't know,
and,
man.
and and your new guy Eichelberger, he looks like a machine at running back here.
Yeah, yep. He can, once he gets going again. He's one of those body blow guys. I mean, if you let him get too many carries and he gets too much action on you, sooner or later he's going to pop one like that. And yeah, it was just one of those things where Grand Valley is just starting to 4 weeks in, new offensive coordinator, new starting quarterback, and the offense is starting to try and take the identity that the coaching staff's looking for. And again, it was a body blow game, and they out body blowed West Florida handily in this one. That score doesn't even necessarily belie how
Right.
or tell the story of just how lopsided this game kind of was, and in part because West Florida's offense just could not move the ball. Grand Valley's defense was just out of sight in this game.
Yeah, I heard somebody, I forget where it was on YouTube, or somebody said, yeah, 14-7 game at halftime. It was kind of anybody's game, and I was watching, I was like, no, the one score that West Florida had defensive touchdown like we just talked about. You know, when I watched West Florida a week previous against West Alabama, they had some real challenges running the football,
Yep.
and there was a lot of pressure on the quarterback. And I thought coming into this one, boy, this feels like it's going to be a repeat of that, because anything that West Alabama's doing, I'm going to have every bit of faith that Grand Valley's going to do, and some, defensively, with the way they get after the quarterback. And Niles King, to see him have a day, not a real big surprise there, right? And 8 sacks. None of this really was a shock, and I think it reaffirms Grand Valley after what was kind of a week against a good D3 opponent. But then at the same time, it makes people nationally wonder: is West Florida? I mean, are they a top 25 team this year? What, that kind of thing, and for people down there, I think in a few weeks when they play like a Delta State, then people are going to have a much better idea how good is this win, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be true. I think both the things you're saying have a lot of validity to them. This was a good performance for Grand Valley. I'm sure the coaching staff probably still frustrated by the bit of the lull that happened after the first drive and until the end of the second quarter.
Right.
But if you're West Florida, you come into this game thinking, okay, they wanted some, and they thought they had a real good shot to get a big road win against a top-ranked opponent. And boy, they just did not look up to it. It's not to say that there aren't guys that can play. And again, there's some cats on that defense that had good ball games. To me, the offensive line play was just a real big question mark, and that's something that they're either going to have to figure it out or rely on the fact that they can kind of cover up for it in the Gulf South. Because it was definitely a liability in this game. Grand Valley they did some good things schematically, but they also just, were just physically manhandling them at the point of attack. And it was just, you're right. I mean, the game you were watching is the game I saw from the booth as well. You just never felt like West Florida was ever going to put anything together offensively.
I think West Florida is going to, with a young quarterback like that, I think that they may need to figure out a way for him to get the ball out of his hands a little bit quicker, and be able to have a little more of that aspect in the offense. But when we mentioned earlier that you were there in person calling the action, we weren't kidding. So there's my guy at halftime, getting a chance to hear Coach Wooster talk about all the things that he thought they could have done better in that first half. But
he did, and I almost felt like he was yelling at me a little bit too. So,
well, fair enough. But it's always great to see our folks on our show get a chance to, whether we're on sidelines, we're going ahead and covering these big games. It's great for us to have representation like that, and it was cool seeing you on air, buddy.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I've had a lot of schools have me on their radio broadcasts, whether it's at halftime or in pre-games and stuff, and it's just the chance to get to do that kind of stuff is so neat. I'm so thankful for it, and I owe Brandon a lot for giving some guy with no media experience a shot, 18 years ago or whatever it was, and to be able to have it turn into all of this is really great. So the kind of the love that is reciprocated between the schools and D2.
Right.
It's a gas, man. It's just too fun.
No doubt about it. And a little bit of a tease, stay on for the end of the show. Don't just, kind of get off this early. We're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about a brand new thing we're doing to try and help out our buddy Brandon.
That's right.
But for now, we're going to go ahead and move on. Saginaw Valley against UIndy. At UIndy, 17-7 game. Looks like UIndy's just kind of handling their business. Then all of a sudden, UIndy can't score much more. Right. And Saginaw, who had turned over the ball quite a bit in the first half, seemed like they got things going on what was a really ugly rainy night, Tony.
Yeah, no, this was Hurricane Helene remnants that were dousing the Indianapolis area and a lot of the upper, kind of middle Midwest, if you will. I guess Michigan counts as the upper Midwest. And we didn't see any rain in Michigan last weekend. So, but yeah, it was a deluge that they were playing in, so the conditions weren't great. But you nailed it, Witt. I mean, Saginaw was really struggling with turnovers. Obviously, down 2 scores at the break. got a touchdown in the third quarter to try and get it closer, and then Indianapolis is driving, and they'd played a pretty mistake-free ball game up to that point. And the two big turnovers that came in the fourth quarter were Gavin Sukup interceptions. One of them got returned. The first one got returned for a touchdown, 70 yards by Eli Gordon, who has just been freaking everywhere through 4 games for Saginaw Valley. And we'll talk more about him in a minute. And then after Indy responds and retakes the lead, Saginaw responds and gets a good drive and goes down and takes the lead and gets a long touchdown pass to Terrence Brown out of the backfield. And when Indianapolis is trying to close the game out and go get the lead for good as the minutes are ticking away, Sukup threw that second interception, and that sealed it for the Cardinals. So that's, a lot of expectations for Saginaw Valley coming into this year, and rightfully so, especially when you look at the personnel they have on that defense. You felt like even though they're starting a freshman at quarterback, they've got time for him to settle in, and to go and just lay that egg at Northwood the way they did. You kind of thought, okay, is this more of the same?
Right.
Okay, this opened some eyes, and okay, maybe it isn't. Maybe the expectations were warranted, because that's a road win at who is likely going to win the GLVC. And unless this exposed some things that we don't see really manifesting yet in Indianapolis, I'm not seeing a lot of chances for them to take another loss on the rest of their schedule.
Yeah, it looked like this year that UIndy maybe had taken kind of that next maybe half step up. Sukup's a good player.
Yeah.
John Lewis is a nice running back.
Yes, he is.
But you take, and their defense had played well this year, but you take a look at their futility there on third and fourth down. You're not going to win a lot of football games that way. And, I saw a highlight of Mason McKenzie the other day on the YouTube machine. I tell you, he can fly.
Oh yes,
he can. He got an open field. He went like 80 yards for a score, outran the defense, and it was, you got that combination with him and Terrence Brown. If this offense can kind of keep getting stuff going with the way they have talent on defense, this could be a club that is going to be a real tough out in the GLIAC.
Yeah, and McKenzie was a prep all-star here on the west side of Michigan. And so, I mean, there are some of us that saw that kid play in high school, and you're seeing the same kind of stuff that we all saw when he was in high school in terms of being able to, if he gets outside to contain, he'll outrun more people than you think he might be able to.
I was shocked. I mean, everybody had an angle on him, and he took it in for a tud. So, yeah.
Yep.
As we move through to the other games, and those were easily our biggest results, I had a chance to notice Campbellville, who's, for what it's worth, an unbeaten NAIA, who I want to say they're not ranked yet, but right on the cusp of being ranked. They were kind of able to have their way 24-8 over Roosevelt. I'm assuming Roosevelt probably was hoping to have a little bit better showing than they did in that one.
Well, have their way is maybe not entirely the whole story, Witt, because, I mean, Roosevelt had more first downs, outgained them. Pretty sure they won the turnover battle. But they had, let me find the exact number, 12 penalties for $117.
Oh.
So that'll ruin your weekend doing that kind of stuff. And a couple of missed field goals, turned it over on downs in Campbellville territory a couple of times. So it's not like Roosevelt wasn't doing anything. Sure. They just couldn't score the football, and they kind of kept shooting themselves in the foot when they had chances. So again, we've seen enough out of this Roosevelt team to think, okay, these guys are putting in some work. It just hasn't turned into any wins for them yet.
Well, as we move forward, Ferris State.
Yeah, they got to try and win at Ferris this week.
I was just going to say, speaking of,
I don't know if it's going to happen this week either.
Yeah, that might be weeks down the line, but Ferris State made a trip out east to America International, and I think they were scoring points as they got off the bus in this one, Tony.
Well, maybe they had the scoreboard set to 28 when they got off the bus. I don't know. 84 points, I believe, is a school record for the Bulldogs. So congrats to the kids on putting up a good day, 700 plus yards of offense.
Well, I think they had a running clock in the second half as well. So yeah,
yeah, I don't. I'm not even sure what to do with that one.
yeah,
I mean, individually, there were a couple of nice performances. Trinidad Chambliss continues to kind of run things. He didn't see a ton of action once they got up. They were able to play 2-3 other quarterbacks, and so Coach Anise was able to get a look at some guys. But Cannon Katzer, played a little bit, had a couple of touchdowns. He's been getting a lot of run at the tailback position. James Kobe, we'll talk about him in a little bit, actually had a big game from the tailback position for Ferris. So, I mean, this was a good balance, and pretty much everybody they took got to play, which, when you make the travel roster, you're not always sure if you're going to be able to get in the game, and they all did. So, I mean, it was a pretty dominating performance and not anything that was entirely unexpected. I think the only thing that, would worry me a little bit in terms of Ferris is they did fumble the ball 4 times in this game, losing 3, which sounds bad until you look at that. American International fumbled 7 and lost 3. But I mean, you just don't want to be putting the ball on the deck that much, especially against good teams. So that's something, that ball security. We always talk about how Ferris has a risk tolerance, but
sure,
that's something they got to work on cleaning up if when they start getting into league play here this week.
Now, when we have Truman State with Wayne State, there's plenty of these games that we have here where we have the GLIAC and the GLVC going against each other. And, with Truman State, that seems like it's about a 50-50 proposition against quite a bit of the league. Did you think in this case that Wayne State was going to be able to pull this one out? Or, I know they're 0 on the season. Kind of what were your thoughts in seeing this?
Well, only for the fact that it seemed like maybe Truman just is that step off of where they have been the last few years. And Wayne's still trying to get things figured out. I think they've kind of settled in with Champ Edwards as the starting quarterback, and he had another good game in this one, pretty much going the distance there. And the Warriors were up 10-0 in this game, Witt. I mean, it's not like this was just a beatdown and they scored a couple of by the ways. This was 10-0 middle of the second quarter. And then Truman rips off 31 straight points, and then it was an by the way that they ended up that Wayne ended up scoring late. So I mean, this was a game that Wayne was in. They didn't get outgained massively. It's just one of those things where I think that's when you got a young team learning how to get on top of somebody and then close them out can sometimes be tricky, and that's something that they're going to have to figure out. But I mean, Wayne moved the ball in this game halfway decent. They outpossessed Truman. I mean, it's not like this was a complete domination by the Bulldogs by any stretch of the imagination. So Wayne's, hey, they're still trying to swim upstream, but at least they're swimming.
Absolutely. Davenport makes the trip on out to William Jewell in the Kansas City area.
Yeah.
William Jewell undefeated coming into this game. Now, if we're going to be really frank, they had played like, the Coast Guard and, Sister Mary Holy Water and some other teams. But, yes. So, but they outgained Davenport in this one, if my memory serves me right. But Davenport was able to go ahead and still get the W.
Yeah. And this is, one of the things I think that sometimes gets overlooked is the travel can be tough, man. When you don't fly places, it's sometimes hard to go 60 full minutes. And I think that's, if you've seen anything that's been a trend within these Davenport games when they bust to these games, is that they go out, they jump on somebody in the first 2 quarters, and then they go to sleep in the second half and got to hang out for dear life. And that happened again in this game. So you're right. I mean, William Jewell did end up winning some of the statistical battles. Of course, the only one that counts is the number of points. So I guess that's, is the real lesson here. But yeah, I mean, if Davenport wants to be competitive in the GLIAC this year, I mean, especially when you start to see Saginaw coming around, Michigan Tech's off to a 3-1 start. You got to play 60 minutes of ball, and you can't just show up and be good in the first half and not do well in the second half. And last week or 2 weeks ago against Central Missouri, they played a good 60-minute game and darn near pulled that one out. Right. But this is one that, I guess, no disrespect to William Jewell, but this is a game that I would expect, Davenport to go down there and handle it pretty easily. Right. And I suppose in one regard they did, because William Jewell, had to beg and scratch and claw to get that 7 points that they got. But again, this is one where Davenport really, I like to see them stretch that out to 3-4 scores anyway.
Well, and you're not kidding about the travel thing. I mean, I even see that in the Northern Sun when Moorhead makes a trip on down to the St. Louis area and plays McKendree.
Yeah.
I mean, after beating Duluth and a week later beating Augustana, but in the middle of that, when they showed up in St. Louis, they looked like they just got off Willie Nelson's tour bus,
Right.
Sure. But the production I'm seeing from Davenport, Myron Harris continues to be a real guy for them. 100 yards rushing, 60 yards receiving, another score, being a real reliable presence for them. And seems like he may be, is he as good maybe as any running back in the conference, do you think?
He's up there, obviously. I mean, he continues to produce against just about anybody that he goes out on the field against. So we'll talk a little bit about him a little bit more here because he's going to have a tough test this Saturday. But I mean, he's been a guy that, at Wayne, he was a huge producer, and now getting on towards halfway through his second year with Davenport, once again, big producer. I mean, you don't make first team all GLIAC for no reason. So, I mean, the problem is, and we'll talk about this again a little bit more coming up, is he all they have? I don't think he is, but sometimes that's kind of it seems to be how it looks. So,
right. I know exactly what you mean by that.
Yeah.
Well, let's, speaking of running back production, if we take a look at our the players of the week here in the conference, Khalil Eichenberger, not a real surprise. Every time it seemed like he got that edge around the corner on West Florida, he was going downhill with the ball. And tell us a little bit about why he got Player of the Week.
15 carries, 129 yards, and a pair of tutties. I mean, it's a pretty solid week against a ranked opponent that, again, I mean, West Florida maybe isn't as elite as we thought they might have been coming into the season. And yet when you walk on the field before the game and you see it even during the game, they got dudes. I mean, it's not like he was running over guys half his size. So, I mean, it was a great performance, and Khalil's the type of kid I'm sure he would say his offensive line did all the work for him, but he still went out there and did it. And, that 50-yarder that you showed in the highlights there, I mean, he ran away from some people. So when a guy's that big, it can still put that kind of speed together. Yeah, he's going to be tough to handle.
Now, we talked a little bit more about Eli Gordon
right?
earlier, and it seems like that may almost be like a weekly thing, huh?
Well, I'm actually very grateful to Eli because I don't ever have to change this slide from week to week because he's won this award 3 out of 4 weeks. So
that's wild.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, again, we talked about the 70-yard interception return that he had in this game, but he also had, I think, a couple other pass breakups, and he led the team in tackles again this week. So, I mean, there's no defensive player, singularly within the league that has been more just all over the field in their first few weeks than Eli has for Saginaw Valley. I mean, he's just been fantastic. And when you think about who the other guys are, the Kretzingers, the Rawls, those types of guys that they have on that roster.
Right.
I mean,
some All-American players. Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Right.
So, and then we have on from Davenport, Cal Doyle made it. How did Cal make it to the Player of the Week list?
Well, he had 43 yards a kick, a couple inside the 20, but I think the crown jewel was the 83-yard field position flipper that he threw at the Cardinals down there in Missouri. So
that's big.
Somebody put something like that out there, they're going to usually get a nod, especially in the special teams category. So
no doubt about it.
That's Cal for that.
Also, we have some Week 4 notes. I'll let you kind of speak a little bit further about that, buddy.
Yeah, no, we talked a little bit about James Kobe there on the right for Ferris State. Again, 12 carries, $110 and a tutty. Had a nice game, and again, we've talked, and I know you've hit on this point a few times. Ferris has just not had that lead back here for the last year or two, and as they continue to try and figure out who that is, Kobe made his claim for that position with a great performance out at American International. And then, of course, on the left there is Myron Harris. We talked about him a little bit earlier, but you nailed it. I mean, he had had the touchdown rushing on 102 yards, but then also led the team in receiving with 6 grabs for 61 yards. So, I mean, again, you got guys like Preston Smith. I know Khalif Jenkins has been a little dinged up, but I mean, they've got other guys, and Michael Horo's been taking the bulk of the snaps at quarterback, and he can run the ball and move things when he needs to. But it seems like through the first 4 weeks, Myron Harris has been the guy for Davenport, and there's not a lot of question about that.
Sure. Well, as we kind of move into our next week here, just 4 games this coming week. And as we take a look, we've got some good matchups here.
Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and kind of do a little bit of our tail of the tape with each one of them, and kind of take a little bit of a deeper dive. We've got noon starts, a 1 o'clock start, and a 2 o'clock start. So
yeah, everybody will be wrapped up early.
I was just going to say all the GLIAC results are going to be fairly early along, but let's take a look at the first matchup we have. We have Wayne State 0-4 at the moment. Michigan Tech 3-1. That one is of course their loss in overtime to Bemidji State. So
yep.
As you take a look, they're not sitting too bad at the moment, scoring plenty of points. How do you see that one playing out, my friend?
Well, so this is going to be probably the most physical game that Tech has had so far this year, right? I mean, they played, a GMAC opponent. They did play Bemidji, so I'm sure that game had some heightened.
I was going to say, Bemidji is online too right now, wanting to talk
for sure.
to you.
Yep, for sure. No. That's. But again, GLIAC top to bottom, just week in, week out, it really is, a different brand. So I'm interested to see how Tech moves the ball here. I mean, again, the Achilles heel that we've been talking about with them now for a couple of years has been that lack of a rushing attack.
Right.
They did run for 231 a couple of weeks ago down at Wisconsin Oshkosh, and Oshkosh is a ranked Division III opponent, so it's not like they were little sisters of the poor. But
right.
Again, this has still been the Achilles heel. But my problem for Wayne State in this one is that back end at 245 a game, you can see down there at the bottom, is a little on the leaky side. And so even if the ground game doesn't work for Tech, I don't think that's going to hurt him here. Alex Freeze has got way too many weapons,
right?
Whether it's Chantney or Michalak or D. Willis, and I got a hard time seeing Wayne being able to keep up and score enough points in this one. Now with that said, Champ Edwards, at least in terms of how he's coming along in his maturation of being able to balance the running and the passing. I mean, I don't know. Coach Wheatley might have some stuff cooked up for him to do that maybe Tech hasn't seen on tape yet. So I don't think this is Wayne State gets shut out, but I also think that this is, again, I just don't know that Wayne will score some points. I just don't know if they can score enough to keep up with Tech in this one.
Yeah, I'm looking at this one going, I want to see how Tech responds to being what I would consider to be a clear-cut favorite in a game like this.
Exactly.
Do they take care of business by 14, 17 points like maybe we think they should?
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of see it come down to. Now, if we take a look at our friends on Massey, have this as a 17-point favorite for Tech. I think that number's about right. If they play the way we think that they can, that makes sense to me. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was a closer game either. So
I wouldn't either. That number seems maybe just a hair on the high side.
Sure.
But again, that part of that's because I just have watched these GLIAC games for so many years, and just when you think you've got these teams figured out, something goes awry. And I'm trying to remember last year. I think Wayne played Tech really tough, and Tech had to win late. So again, it's that sort of thing where you think somebody should be favored, and they just don't play like it,
right.
Or the other team shows you they got more than what you thought. And that's the nature of the GLIAC. So that's why, like last week, when Chuck was closing the show, he's like, "Oh, we're going into league games," and I was just like, "Yes," because it just turns into haywire all the time. So I think the only other thing that maybe is definitely in Tech's favor here is that trip to Houghton is no joke. I mean, it's from Wayne, that bus ride is going to be every bit of 9 to 10 hours, with stops, and so it's an ask,
The next matchup we have, Saginaw Valley, we talked about earlier, and we kind of think that they're on the come. And, Northern Michigan, 0-4. We've kind of been looking, Tony, at some point in the preseason here for them to kind of stand up and really have a game, and we kind of haven't had that just yet. The defense has given up a whole lot of yards.
Yeah,
So with this, do we give Northern Michigan a chance at home, or is Saginaw Valley just kind of too much the team right now?
that's going to be my inclination with. And again, this is another Upper Peninsula trip for Saginaw Valley. So I mean, it's going to Tech is just that much further if you're coming from the Lower Peninsula of Michigan.
Yep.
And with Saginaw being a little bit further north from where Detroit is, I mean, that 9 to 10 hours that we just talked about for Wayne gets cut down to about maybe, I think it's 5 or 6 for Saginaw to go to Marquette. So I mean, it's just a little bit easier to palate. But also, again, I just Northern's got so much that they're trying to get figured out from where they were a couple of years ago. And so far this year, you've seen them kind of hold teams a little bit defensively in the first couple of quarters. And then you get to that end of the first half and through the third quarter, somebody starts to put it on them, and then they're just too far behind to be able to catch up. And then they find a way to scrabble together a couple of scores in the fourth quarter to make the number look a little bit closer. But the reality is when you're only scoring 17 points a game and giving up 37, I mean, that's just math. That's just math you can't overcome. And Saginaw's defense is good enough in this game where I think they're going to make Northern really work for it. So even if Mason McKenzie plays like a freshman in his first time up at the Dome and doesn't look good for parts of the game, which is what we've seen through 4 weeks. There have been times where Saginaw's offense has kind of been a little bit, flighty. The defense is still going to hold things together and be able to keep them in it.
Sure. The next game that we have up, we kind of foreshadowed this one a little bit. Roosevelt gets to go play with the welcoming committee, Ferris State, in this one. So this is this is clearly going to be a mismatch on paper.
Yeah,
Roosevelt. This will be kind of an eye-opening experience with the athleticism, probably of Ferris State. You would certainly have to think. I have a feeling, Tony, just kind of it feels like Coach Anise and company are really trying to iron things out with this offense. And if it means we put up a big number, oh, well, we put up a big number. And unfortunately, across from them right now is Roosevelt.
Yeah. And Roosevelt, if you look at their defense, only 26 points a game. It doesn't look super bad. But again, they've played a D3 team, albeit a top 5 D3 team, but still a D3 team.
Yep.
A zero Scally FCS team, and then an AI school. So this is going to be their first dip into the deep end of the pool in D2, and it doesn't get a whole lot deeper than playing Ferris State, right? So I'm sure that 26 is going to get – that average is probably going to go up after this weekend. Now, what I'll be interested to see, however, is, Keontae Nixon's got speed to burn out there on the outside for Roosevelt. Can Carson Budke get him the ball? Maybe they hit for a couple big plays, because that's the type of thing that can happen. And if Ferris State does happen to get a little loose with the football like they did last week, can Roosevelt actually close out a drive and make them pay? I mean, that's going to be the angle that they're going to have to try and attack here, because they're just going to have to they're going to have to take advantage of every opportunity that Ferris may or may not give them to try and stay in this game and keep it close. Because I'm with you. I think there's a lot of ironing going on, and Ferris is going to look up to put up as many big numbers as they can. Trinidad Chambliss is now obviously the guy with the lack of availability for Carson Golfer, so he's going to get his snaps. But it seems like Coach Anise is really still trying to figure out, hey, do we have a 2? Who's that going to be? What's that going to look like? Right. And because I've actually been surprised at how few snaps Chambliss has gotten in some of these games. But when you don't know who's going to back him up, I think that's something that maybe Ferris is a little just worried about that, because if Chambliss were to get knocked out, then what do you do? So they've got to figure that out.
I think Coach Anise feels good about what he has with Chambliss.
I agree.
And wants to be able to find that same feeling with somebody else as his 1A and 1B, because that you're not just a 1 quarterback with them. You're a 1A or a 1B when it comes to that. But Roosevelt, they've got a tough slate here. I mean, you have Ferris State right out of the gate. You got Saginaw the week after. A few weeks later, you got Davenport. I mean,
Yeah.
it would have been nice to have them play somebody maybe a little bit more in the bottom half of the league right away, just to see how it goes without them having to come in and play somebody quite like this right out of the gate. But you know what? They had to start with somebody, and there you have it. So
Yeah.
the final game that we have, I think, is an intriguing one. Now, while Davenport isn't ranked, I don't think they're terribly far from it either. They're probably in that 30-ish range. And when you consider how well that they've defended this year,
Yeah.
the fact that they've already faced a team with a whole lot of horsepower with, Central Mo and stuff like that, I don't think they're going to flinch with Grand Valley. But at the same time, I just don't know if they can hang around with them in this game. But I think it's an intriguing matchup. How do you see it?
100%. And this is one of the things that, everybody who's tight to the GLIAC knows this, is that even though Davenport hasn't, broken through and been able to get that share of the league title that they've been really close to the last couple of years, everybody knows that when you play the Panthers, they're going to hit you. And so that's Grand Valley will tell you that. Ferris will tell you that. Michigan Tech will tell you that. This is a physical football team. And so this is going to be kind of a rock fight type of game. You might not see, either team blow the other one out, I don't think. Now, again, I mentioned this on Inside back on Sunday, that the last 3 games in this series have been pretty lopsided.
Mm-hmm.
But with that said, last year, Jason Whitaker got hurt the week before, and so he wasn't able to play in the season finale, against Grand Valley. And so Davenport, had to throw somebody out there who had never taken a college snap, I think, and he had to start the game. So, I mean, you got to put some context to some of that. But when you look at what these defenses do, I mean, Davenport's given up 17.5 a game, and they played Central Missouri. That counts in that.
Right.
I mean, that shows you what they're doing. And while they haven't played necessarily the stiffest of competition in some regards, hey, Thomas More, I think they're 3-1,
right?
William Jewell's 3-1. Again, they played Fort Lewis and Kentucky Wesleyan and whatever else, but they still went out and won ball games.
No, I agree with you. Yeah,
and
they played an interesting mixed bag too.
Yeah. So I mean, from Grand Valley standpoint, this is going to be a defense that's going to strike you, and they're going to be tough up front. And this is not an easy game, for Grand Valley to employ their kind of body blow methodology. But that's probably what they're going to stick to, because that's what they want to do. Now, if you're Davenport, again, Myron Harris is going to get his. Whether he's going to be successful with those touches, that's going to be the question. They found ways to get him the ball on the outside. Right. And that's worked out really well for him if the run game isn't working so great. To me, this is a Preston Smith kind of a game, because he's a big
that's
body
the
receiver.
Exact name I was thinking of.
Yep, with some big time speed. And if they can pass pro enough to get O'Horo the time, he can find guys. I mean, that was one of the things, again, I'm not saying Central Missouri's defense is the gold standard in D2, but when he had guys open in that game, he was hitting them. He was actually much more accurate than I remembered him from watching him play at Saginaw Valley. So, this is an offense that's got some dudes, and if they can get the protection right and they can get some offensive line work done in this game, they can score some points and keep this close, even though the stats don't necessarily indicate that that's what they've been doing so far this year. I think there's more talent there than people think.
I think I've always thought Preston Smith was a very high ceiling player for them, and has a chance to be as good as probably about any wideout in this league.
Yep.
And so this would be the time for him to shine. And maybe you don't go with as quite as heavy with the conventional run game against Grand Valley, and find Myron Harris a little bit more out of the backfield and see if you can get some good matchups. But I'll be interested to tune in and see how this one goes, because I think Davenport defends the run well enough that they could make this game a little bit more, of heavy lifting for Grand Valley than they want it to be. And Grand Valley's coming off of a big emotional game, having to show up against West Florida. So Very much looking forward to that
Keep an eye
contest.
on the quarterbacks for Davenport too. See if O'Hara or Dewan Mathis get a lot of designed runs.
Right. I could see that. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, as we kind of finish up the week, some kind of breaking news for us, some news stuff that I want to talk about is literally within the last hour. We have released this, which is we're trying to find a creative way for people to want to be involved in trying to help out our buddy Brandon Meisner. Now, for those who aren't aware, he is the founder of D2football.com and really is the person who got the ball rolling with all the kind of coverage that we're trying to provide small college football, specifically our brand of Division II. And with that said, Brandon had a stroke back months ago, and we're trying to do anything we can to help him with his recovery and really just helping support him. So if you happen to have it, our social media pages are going to have information about this. Our website will, and so forth. Heck, even go to my Twitter. I just was retweeting this earlier. Now, I'm going to be real frank with you, Tony. That's a regular 50-50 shirt. I fit better in my style of life in the middle shirt, which is a dry fit. My body seems to cooperate better in that. There's also a hoodie if people are interested, or a long sleeve shirt. But it's one of those things that I feel obligated. We have this for 2 weeks, Tony. They're going to have this store open for us, and we're trying to do whatever we can because for a guy who means a whole lot to us.
Yeah, and I hope everybody that sees this, shows how much he's meant to them too, and they may not have realized how much he meant to them, even though they love the site, knowing what a force Brandon has been to create this and then keep it going and grow it into what it's become, and to hoodwink some jokers like you and me and helping out and being a part of things.
Hoodwink's a good word for that. Yes.
Well, I mean, he's a charismatic and convincing fellow, right? So yeah. Obviously, we love him, and we want to make sure that he's able to keep going on getting better and getting back to being a part of the gang with us. So anything that anybody can do to help out, man, we'd sure appreciate it. And the funny thing is we've never really made D2 logoed things available, in part because we're such a small staff, and there's a certain when you're on the staff, that's a way people can identify you. But this is one that boy, does this hit the bullseye in terms of a way for people to be able to rep the brand and show some love for the guy who got it all started.
Yeah, and for those who aren't aware of what that logo is that you're seeing there, this is the exact same as this right here, which was the helmet logo. Boy, I didn't do that very well. The helmet logo that Northwest Missouri State and Minnesota State, Mankato, both wore on opening night in week 0, and they've been wearing it ever since. To kind of do a tribute to our guy Brandon, and we thought that was the coolest thing ever. And Brandon got pretty emotional, when I showed that to him back then. And we figured, let's throw that on a shirt, and there's a lot of symbolism there. So kind of a cool thing, and you'll see that all over our socials and so forth. But Tony, as we go ahead and we kind of wrap up here. We're a month into the season. In a few weeks, what I'm going to do at the halfway point is I am going to trouble you to go ahead and make power rankings and do a power ranking of the conference. So I'm not trying to tease that, but it might sound like I am. And you've got a chance. You've got like a little bit of time to think about what would those power rankings look like, because we're still weeks away from having some of those really big contests.
I would agree, and I will agree to doing those power rankings as long as my D2 helmet back here gets one of those decals that you just showed, because it's feeling a little incomplete without that. So
I think that's pretty easy to do. So
Beautiful.
Well, for everyone who tuned on in, I appreciate you guys taking a look here at what we've got on GLIAC Weekly. Tony and I will be back next week for some more action. We'll go ahead and see some more highlights and talk about all the games being played. Look for that guy out at a game. I'll be on a sideline this weekend, but I'll be on Duluth and Augustana. I won't see you guys out there, but you know what? Everyone, see you at the games. Thank you.
See you guys.